Go team.
Good morning, everyone. As you're joining us, in the chat, if you can enter where you are joining us from today, and if you're going to be, what you're going to be studying at NC State. And we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. We're going to give everyone a chance to join. So good morning again. If you're just joining us, if you can put in the chat where you're joining us from and what you'll be studying at NC State. We've got somebody in Houston, Texas. Oh, it's very early for you.
Michigan.
Oh, also Michigan. You got snow yesterday, maybe in Michigan. Good morning to all of you joining us, or I guess good afternoon, evening to all of you joining us from India. I see China. Oh, I saw somebody say they're in Asheville. That's my favorite city. New Zealand.
Ghana,
Iran.
Bangladesh.
Well, good morning, everyone. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our third Packing Up Pre-Arrival session. We're really glad that you chose to join us. My name is Lauren Ball, and I work in the Office of International Services at NC State. And before we get started, I'm going to go over some Zoom logistics so that we can make the most of our time together this morning. As you all know, the topic for today's session is admissions and immigration. Our campus experts, who will introduce themselves in just a minute, they'll be addressing frequently asked questions first, but we will have plenty of time for you to ask questions directly to our panel. In Zoom at the bottom of your screen, you should see the Q&A feature. That's where you'll be able to submit questions directly to our panel. We anticipate a lot of questions today, so we also ask that you use the thumbs up icon. As participants, you'll be able to see the other questions that other students have asked. And so if you hit that thumbs up icon, if it's a question that you also have, that will help us better judge which questions are most relevant to our group today. As with all of our Packing Up sessions, this one will be recorded and it'll be sent to you soon through email. But lastly, and perhaps most importantly, I do want to note that the answers that we'll be providing today are the answers as of April 22nd, 2021. I think we've all experienced during the pandemic that things change quickly. And so the answers that we're providing today are the answers with the information that we have available to us today. Certainly, if things change, as things change, NC State's Graduate School and the Office of International Services will keep you updated. And with that, I am excited to introduce or have my colleagues introduce themselves from the Graduate School and the Office of International Services, and if they can introduce themselves in the order they appear on this slide.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to those of you who have been in our previous town halls, and a special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. My name is Peter Harries, and I'm Dean of the Graduate School.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Gentili. I'm the Director of Admissions in the Graduate School.
Welcome, international students. I am Denise Westlow, the International Admissions Specialist, who you see my name on your documents.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haley Hardenbrook. I'm going to be the new Denise very soon. I'll be the International Admissions Specialist.
And I'm with the Office of International Services. I'm the Director, Elizabeth James.
I guess I'll go since Lauren already introduced herself. Hi, everyone. My name's Asia King. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the programs coordinator in the Office of International Services.
So we obviously have a lot of wisdom on the webinar this morning, and we're going to jump right into our first topic and address a lot of frequently asked questions related to admissions. Based on the questions that have been asked in our previous sessions, we know that this is a topic of obvious interest to new international students. And so our first question, what is the deadline to submit my certificate of financial responsibility and or visa clearance?
Okay, on the CFR, you probably noticed that there is a May 1st deadline. The May 1st deadline is actually a soft deadline. We do allow more time for students to submit their financial documents, especially if they're applying for an educational loan. In terms of the visa clearance forms, those are students who are usually in the United States. You do have more time to submit those. And so we'd like to see everything in so that you can turn around and get your consulate appointment. So if you can get it to us before June 15th.
My admission letter shows that I need my degree statement. Can I bring that with me?
Okay, so you're being asked on the admission letter for your official transcripts as well as the degree statement. To finalize the admission so that we can start you in the program so that you can register and get your Unity ID. We really just need your official transcript. That could be your 6th semester, 7th semester. If you're still studying and you don't have your final transcript, that's okay. Send us the earlier one. It does have to be sent by the university. Students are not allowed to send it to us directly by email because we don't deem that as official. But in terms of the degree statement, you can bring that with you when you come. We realize, especially students who are graduating this year, may only get their degree statement within 6 months' time, so that's fine. Just bring that with you. But we are trying our best to ask students to bring or send their official transcripts either by courier, mail, or by an attachment. We will accept them as an attachment if it comes from the university and we can identify that it's the university that's sending it to us.
Thank you, Denise. Next question, what should I do if I cannot get an official transcript?
We understand that a lot of students are having some issues, especially with universities working off-site. We've been asking students to do their best, and if they can't, and it's impossible to get that official transcript, you can contact our office. We have been giving out, with an exception, a transcript exception, and then the student can bring the transcript with them in the fall when they start. We are only giving that as an exception, so do your best to see if you can get it from your university. Either send it as an attachment to the graduate school, and there is a graduate school email address in your letter that has gone out to you that you can send it to. We can authenticate it, then we'll accept it. But do your best to see if you can get it before coming.
Another frequently asked question. I have been admitted to NC State University for the fall 2021 semester. Can I defer my admission?
Yes, students do have the option to defer, especially if they're having difficulty booking an appointment for their consulate, or the appointment they've got is going to be in September, October. We understand that with consulates being closed. If you need to defer, you can send an email to your department, because it's the department that has to basically approve the deferral first, and they will notify the graduate school to update your term. We currently, we have allowed a year's extension in terms of a deferral, but because of COVID, so if you originally applied for fall 2020, have deferred to 2021, and then you still can't get your visa, you can defer again. We are currently allowing that because of the COVID situation. So again, you need to contact your department first to ask for the deferral. That can be done anytime before we tell students before August the 1st.
Are all academic programs eligible for deferral?
I believe they are, but I would probably check with your department. And Dr. Harris might be able to confirm that, but I believe that most academic programs, you are eligible for deferral.
Yeah, I don't think there's any program where you couldn't be deferred. I mean, you need to make the request, of course, but I think everybody understands the situation as it exists, and so deferrals are certainly possible.
And Denise, you kind of already addressed this, but what is the deadline to submit a deferral request? And if you remind students again how they do that.
So at the graduate school, I think we're telling students, you know, to put in your deferral request at least by August the 1st. The departments may ask you to do that a little bit earlier, but that's usually a date because it's still before the start of the term. And again, you just have to send an email to your department requesting that you defer to the next term, either spring 2022 or fall 2022. Once they have approved the request, then they will notify the graduate school and your application will be updated to the new term. And then you'd have to submit, if you are deferring to fall 2022, you would have to submit a new CFR for next year because we do change it every year, the CFR. If you are deferring to spring 2022, depending on how old your bank documents are, you still may be able to use what you have already uploaded for the deferral to spring 2022.
Thank you, Denise. So we're going to pivot a little bit now to address questions pertaining to immigration and immigration regulations. So our first immigration question, and this is one that we're already seeing a lot in the Q&A. Do we know when U.S. embassies and consulates will open for appointments?
This is the $6 million question that we have been, I mean, everybody on campus, all the departments asked me this question. Peter Harris asked me this question. And this is the one that is very difficult to answer. So, you know, embassies are first of all, the Department of State has announced that they will attempt to resume visa processing as normal as possible starting in May. Some embassies have been operating, but it's very few in terms of like percentage wise around the world. And then there is huge pent up demand for visas. As you can imagine, I mean, just with the F1 category, you have the class of the fall entering class of 2020 competing with the now fall entering class of 2021. And so there's just a lot of pent up demand. And the thing that's very difficult is that the US embassies have to operate based on the local conditions that they are located in. So if there is a new lockdown restriction like we've been seeing in Europe, if there are increasing case numbers or new variants of concern discovered, they may have to limit their services or limit the number of appointments that they have. If there's, you know, if they have a positive case in their facility and they need to shut down for a couple of weeks. So it's very difficult. And so, no, we don't know for sure exactly when each embassy will open. The best way to check on your embassy is to always go to the website of the consulate or embassy, the US embassy in your country, and find out how they're operating. That is the best source of information.
Do we know when travel restrictions will be lifted, or do we know if new travel restrictions will be put in place before August?
Right. So as a recap, you know, the Office of International Services has been dealing with the impacts of COVID since January of 2020, when the first travel restriction went into place for China. So it's China, Iran, Europe, UK and Ireland, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, South Africa. I may have even done that in order of when they were imposed. So there are exceptions for Europe, UK, Ireland, Canada, and Mexico for students to enter the United States. But there is no such exception for China, Iran, South Africa, Brazil. And we do not know when or if those will be lifted, or if they are not lifted, whether they will be amended to be like the European one. I mean, that's certainly what we are hoping for, and what along with our educational organizations around the country have been asking for, but we don't know. The one thing that I predicted about the current presidential administration is that they would be much more friendly towards immigration in general, but also much more serious in their COVID response. And so that's some of what we're seeing right now. I do not know if new travel restrictions will be put in place. This experience of the last year and a few months has told us that whenever there has been a high case count or a new variant of concern discovered, sometimes both, that there is a possibility that a new travel restriction will be put in place. I don't want to put additional stress or panic on anyone here, so we don't know anything. I have no insider information, but we are watching carefully around the world for what's going on with COVID numbers, just to see where some of our concerns might be. We'll just have to see. Unfortunately, there's a lot we can't predict with this disease. Next.
How late can I arrive at NC State for the fall 2021 semester?
So we're going to be talking, we're going to hear us come back to this a little bit, but one of the things that we know, most of our students will arrive without vaccine. We'll talk more about vaccine later. We anticipate that that's going to happen, and we want, because of that, there are self-quarantine requirements, and we will be able to vaccinate you on campus. So again, more on the health stuff later. In order to accomplish all of that, we need you here, and we need you here hopefully before the start of the semester. We also are waiting for SAVP which is the Student and Exchange Visitor Program, which is the agency that oversees F1 and J1. The Department of State oversees the J1 program, but we're waiting for the SAVP to tell us what the rules will be for enrollment for the fall semester. So they have not told us that yet. So in a nutshell, we need you to arrive within the first week of class. There's lots of important reasons for that. If you are going to be in mostly in-person classes, we don't want you missing the first 2 or 3 weeks because you're doing your self-quarantine. Likewise, we want you to be able to get vaccinated, and there might be, there are some side effects associated with vaccinations. You might not feel well, you may not want to go to class. So we want you to have time to do all of that before you really need to be in your labs and in your classrooms. But we also know that the visa situation is very, very complicated. So again, within the first week of class, on an exception basis, we may allow up until census date, but we are not able to say that just yet. But census date is August 27th. But right now the deadline is to arrive within the first week of class. Classes start on the 16th. So you would need to arrive by Monday of the following week, which would be, hold on, August 23rd. Thank you.
If the travel restriction from my country is lifted after the start of the fall 2021 semester, can I arrive then?
That depends. I know that's a horrible answer, but it's unfortunately all I've got. So again, we are waiting for SAVP guidance for what the enrollment requirements will be for the fall. Before COVID, and what the regulations state is that during a semester, international students may take one class per semester that meets their full-time enrollment that is online. Now, obviously, COVID totally, changed all of that. And so, initially when in the spring of 2020, international students were able to go completely online, just like the rest of their counterparts, and not have any problems. In the fall of 2021, the government said, okay, for new arriving students, those students have to, students that arrived after March of 2020, those students have to have at least one in-person class, and the rest can be online. So the challenges in answering this question is we don't know what those requirements are going to be. Are they going to be what the regulations require, which would be all in-person classes except with one online? Or is it going to be some more flexibility where you just have the one in-person class? And so without knowing the answer to that question, it's very difficult to say that we could allow someone to enter in the middle of a semester, because you may be in only online courses if you're starting from abroad. So we will see. And as soon as we have more information, as soon as we know what the requirements are going to be, you can expect to hear from us again in a situation similar to this, where we can inform you of the new requirements. So don't think that you won't hear from us again once we have more information.
You're going to hear so much from us in the coming months. Next question, what is NC State's operational status for the fall 2021 semester, and how will this impact new international student course enrollment requirements?
Yeah. So again, the operational status of the university is just one part of the picture. What the government is going to require is another part of the picture, and that part is not clear yet. What NC State is expecting is we are pushing very hard to have a fully in-person semester, and the quote from the chancellor is as close to fall of 2019 as possible. So there are still a lot of things that we don't know. We don't know what the new guidelines will be once we have a certain threshold of vaccination. We don't know if how many people will be able to have in a classroom, for example, what the densification requirements will be for people. So, will there be an updated mask mandate? Right now, masks are required everywhere on campus. Well, I would expect that would continue through in classrooms, but I don't know. So some of those things are still being worked out, but the plan is to be in as much in person as possible. Now, there are things, again, that we can't predict. While our vaccination rate on campus has been our vaccination rollout has been going very well. We've vaccinated over 6,000 people on campus as of this week, since our clinic stood up. So that's going very well, and employee vaccination rates are going very well. So vaccines have really made a turnaround in the United States, and that's wonderful. But new variants may come. New waves. Different pockets of the United States are experiencing an uptick in infection again, because as lockdown restrictions are eased, just like everywhere else in the world. And so we don't know exactly what will happen for fall, but so we're planning on being in person as much as possible. And whatever happens, we will do everything we can to meet what the government requires in terms of international student enrollment. That's about all I can say without knowing what the government is going to require right now.
Thank you, Beth. So kind of dipping a little bit into some health related questions. Are there mandatory testing or quarantine requirements upon arriving in the United States?
So there are mandatory testing even before you get on a plane to come to the United States. So you have to have proof of a negative test or a doctor's notice about a cured infection, past infection, before you can board a plane to the United States. And I think that's within 72 hours of your flight taking off. So that's the testing requirement before you board a plane. Then upon arrival, there are two requirements. One is that you again test between days 3 and 5 of your arrival. If you have an FDA approved vaccine, which is the Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and the Pfizer vaccine, if you have an FDA approved vaccine, then there is no quarantine requirement. If you do not have one of those approved vaccines, then there is, and again, this is as of today, I don't know what's going to be the requirement in August, but as of today, there's a 7-day self-quarantine requirement. During that time, you should not come to campus for any reason, except for testing. So don't come to campus to get your ID, don't come to campus to participate in orientation activities, don't come for work or to check out the library or buy your books or whatever. Don't come to campus except to participate in the testing requirement. So again, between days 3 and 5, you should go ahead and test. But just because even if you test negative, you still should self-quarantine the full 7 days. If for some reason you are not able to test during that time, that self-quarantine period, then you're supposed to self-quarantine for 10 days. And of course, even if you enter with an approved vaccine and you don't have to self-quarantine, but you get tested, if you have a positive test at any point, you should self-isolate for the required period of time. So that's what the current requirement is as of today. But again, that could be different in a month. It could be different tomorrow. So we'll see. But the best place for you to check those updates, and actually the updates are so recent that we have not had a chance yet to update our own page on the change about the vaccinated folks for the self-quarantine requirement. But for anyone with a non-FDA approved vaccine, that is updated on our website, and that also includes all of the travel restrictions for COVID-related travel restrictions. So if there are any updates, that is the best place to check. And then we link out to the official source for all of those.
All right. So before we jump into the questions that you are submitting live, just one quick reminder to please use the thumbs up icon to upvote questions so that we don't have duplicate questions. That makes it easier for us to sort through the Q&A and see which questions are most relevant to you today. But Asia, what are some of our Q&As coming in through Zoom?
Yes. So the first question, we've been getting a lot of questions about like consulate visits, different things like that. So some of them are more what if, just to let you all know, this is based on the current information that we have today as of April 22nd. So students want to know if there are any other options for to attend NCSU this fall if they are not able to get a consulate appointment in time, or if they have, like, some students are saying that they have consulate appointments in September is the earliest that they can get.
Yeah, I mean, addressing the September late arrival issue, again, that's where we're going to be tied by government restrictions. So, even if the restrictions stayed exactly what they are today, there's a requirement for at least one in-person class. And so arriving in the middle of the semester is just not going to be allowed during, because of that requirement. And it could be that they require you to be in all in-person classes. We don't know. And so except for the one that you're allowed to do. So, arriving within the middle of the semester is just not going to be possible. And it's very disruptive for you too. I mean, it's very difficult to manage online courses anyway. But imagine moving to a new country and setting up your apartment and doing all of those things while you're also trying to keep up with classes. It's not the greatest way to start a semester. So if you have a visa appointment in September and you're not able to get it earlier, what I would recommend is you defer at least to spring. And once the visa is approved, the visa you can enter during any period of validity. So, for India, for example, the visa validity period is usually 5 years. So you can enter anytime during that time. What will happen with the I-20 is you'll keep this, and I saw this question someplace else, you'll keep the same SEVIS ID, you'll keep your SEVIS fee will still apply, your visa hopefully will still be valid, and it'll just have a new start date on your I-20. And so we'll issue you an I-20 to begin in spring semester, and that will allow you to enter up to 30 days in advance of that start date. So if you get your visa in September, then, you know, the great thing is that you can plan your travel to arrive earlier so that you can complete your self-quarantine, get yourself vaccinated, get all settled, and then, you know, be really in the best shape to start school. So those are things to be happy about, that you're not in this, you know, scramble, you know, to get your visa at the last minute and arrive in time. The one thing about arriving in spring is that it can impact your CPT ability for immediate ability to do internships. The requirement for internships is that you be in the United States for a full academic year, which means 2 semesters. So anyone arriving in spring is not going to be eligible for CPT in the summer of 2022. So that's just something to think about when you're making decisions about deferring for a semester versus deferring for another year.
And then speaking on that topic, students are also asking, what is the last day they can enter the US? And based on that day, what is the last day they could possibly get a visa appointment?
I mean, so the last day that you can enter the United States, as we stated earlier, is we would like you to arrive within the first week of class. On an exception basis, we may, depending on what's going on with visas, we may allow, with the department's approval, this is not, OAS can't make this decision. The department needs to make this decision. They may decide to allow you up until the census date, which is August 27th. But that's to arrive, the feet on the ground in the United States. That is not to get your visa stamp. So if your visa appointment right now is scheduled for after the start of classes, then it's very unlikely that you would be able, unless you can get that visa appointment moved, it is very unlikely that you would be able to start the fall semester. At least not here.
I'm going to give another reminder to folks. For those of you dropping questions, I'm not going to get to them. They're all the way at the bottom. So please go through and upvote the ones that you would like answered, or you can even comment. If there's a question that you're like, that's kind of what I'm asking, but I want to add something different, comment on those questions, because we're at 70 now. I'm not going to get to any of those that are at the bottom of the list, but if you get it upvoted, it'll push it up higher. So on to our next questions. They're about class registration. So we're having a lot of questions about how to register for classes if they haven't gotten their Unity ID, if class registration has already started for new admits, and then also if they're seeing classes are full, how are they going to be able to get into those classes, or are the classes going to be increased?
I can take that one. If you're not able to register because you don't have a Unity ID yet, it's most likely because you haven't finished your admissions process. So either we're still waiting for you to submit your CFR with funding, or we're still waiting for your official transcripts. So the sooner that you can get those pieces done, the sooner we can finalize your admission and get you a Unity ID so that you can enroll in classes. Yes, enrollment in classes did start in March. And if you do have a Unity ID, but for some reason you're not able to register, I would say just reach out to your graduate program. They can advise you if classes are getting full. They can advise you if there is a wait list or if there's a way to get into those classes. I think I covered all of that, Asia.
Awesome.
Yeah, just one other thing, if the class, the department will decide whether they're going to open up another class if they've gotten so many, you know, students that are wanting in that particular class.
So we have some general questions here. When students are traveling, do they need to carry their original degree certificates or like transcripts, or is it okay to just have a color copy?
They should carry the original ones that were issued by their university. And then when they arrive, they can bring those by the graduate school. We can make certified copies and give you back your originals.
Awesome. And then if a student has already deferred their admission once, so let's say they deferred last fall, can they defer again?
Yes, we're allowing that. They just need to reach out to their graduate program to get approval, and then they will notify the graduate school.
Awesome. for visa appointments, if students are fully funded by their department, do they still need to show any document that shows their financial situation, or is the funding going to be enough?
With your I-20, which should show that you're being funded by the department, and the letter that the department gives you for your funding, and your admission letter. With those 3 items, that should be enough for your consulate office.
Awesome. Next question, if someone has a tourism, a B1 or a B2 visa, can they enter the US and then try to change their visa to an F1 status?
No.
You see a lot of people shaking their head. No, no, do not do that.
Don't.
So here's the thing with a tourist visa. You are prohibited from study on a tourist visa. You cannot work on a tourist visa. And if the government believes that you have bypassed the consular process so that your intent was to come as a student, not as a tourist, and you are just bypassing the consulate to try and get around the visa process, then they will deny your change of status. So, no, it's not a good idea.
A lot of questions about immunization. If you guys go into the answered selection of the Q&A, I've dropped the link directly to Student Health multiple times. So they just want to get a brief review about immunization records.
Yeah.
They need to be filed in questions related to insurance. And I'll drop the link in the chat for everyone so you have it there as well.
The one thing I can say about the COVID vaccination, so I mean, we've always had immunization requirements, and you can work with student health to get those documents. And I saw, something about the TB test and all of that stuff. That has always been an issue. But just a couple of things about COVID vaccination. So, in terms of required vaccine, right now the United States is not requiring a vaccine to enter the United States. The NC State University is not planning right now to require a vaccine. Again, that's of today. I don't think that we have any intention, but we'll see. So we're not requiring a vaccine. Likewise, I've been in touch with various campus units managing the vaccination program. They know that most of our international students will arrive potentially unvaccinated. So they will be, vaccinations will be available in the fall. They will stand up pop-up tents or whatever, pop-up clinics in order to handle the increased demand at the start of the semester. And the thing that I have had some questions about is, what if I have a different type of vaccine, like AstraZeneca or something that's not approved in the United States? Will that be accepted? And as of right now, a vaccination is a vaccination for us. We're not requiring vaccines in general, and any vaccine works for our purposes. If you are wanting to get an additional vaccine, to get the FDA approved vaccine, that is a medical question that I am not able to answer. So when you arrive, you can talk to the health center and get the medical opinion about, whether it's okay to get 2 vaccinations, all of those kinds of things, because I'm not a doctor. I can't answer that, but I can say that they will be available. We will be ready to vaccinate students who want to receive the vaccine when they arrive.
And there were general questions about just regular immunizations and like TB and things like that. Can you talk about if they can get those immunizations outside of country, what paperwork they have to bring, just a general overview?
Again, I don't work for the health office. People bring documentation from their physicians all the time about vaccines that they've received in their home country. And then if you don't have those vaccines, you can get vaccinated here in the US. So bring what documentation you have. And then things that you're missing can be done upon arrival.
Awesome. We're getting a lot of questions about a visa clearance form. They're wanting to know if that's acceptable for international students. And also there's a long, very specific question, which I would tell you to direct to someone probably in our office if it's a more specific question.
If it's a more specific admissions question about the visa clearance form and getting your I-20 for admission, then you need to direct that to the admissions office, to Denise, Lindsay, or Haley. Just to be clear, but Denise, you want to talk about the visa clearance form?
The visa clearance form that students see is normally for students who are transferring from another university within the United States and transferring their CVIS ID to NC State. And basically in the visa clearance form, I need to see a current F1 visa from your current school, a current I-20 from your current school, an I-94 form, your passport, and a DSO affidavit. That's basically your DSO at your current school has to sign when they are transferring the CVIS ID to NC State. If they don't have a transfer date, that is okay. You can leave that date field blank, or just say that it will be provided upon receipt of the final letter.
Just to clarify, you don't have to have a valid F1 visa in order to transfer your F1 status. You just have to have valid F1 status. So if you've had a visa stamp, we'd like to see a copy of it, but it doesn't have to be, it can be expired.
Correct.
So another question that we have is someone is partially funded or individuals are partially funded through their department and they want to know if there are any extra job opportunities at the university to make ends meet.
So if you are partially funded by your department, it depends on how many hours a week that you are expected to work. So on-campus employment is limited by regulation at 20 hours a week. That is a statutory limitation. No one, including myself or anyone in this meeting, or your manager or your professor or the chancellor of the university can approve you to work more than 20 hours. That is a statutory limitation during the school year. During the summer, you can a vacation term, if you're going to register for the next fall, you can work more than 20 hours. But while school is in session, you're limited to 20 hours. So if you have a 10-hour a week assistantship, then yes, you could do another job for 10 hours a week on campus. But if you already have a 20-hour assistantship, then there is no ability to work more than what you are working. So if you don't have funds to cover your needs from your stipend or from your own personal financial situation, then you might want to rethink how you're going to do your program. Because it's very difficult to get additional money outside of your assistantship if you're in a 20-hour a week assistantship, which is sometimes it might be labeled as 0.5 FTE. FTE is full-time equivalency. So a 1.0 equivalency would be 40 hours a week. 0.5 is 20 hours a week. 0.25 is 10 hours a week. So that helps you give the hour equivalency. So if you are already in a 0.5 FTE or 20 hours a week, then you don't have any ability to do additional employment.
And so we also have a lot of questions about transcripts. So if students do not have institutions that have transcript services, is there a way that they can have the transcripts emailed over, and to who would they send those to?
Yes. So basically, we are currently asking, yes, if the student's university doesn't use an electronic secured service, we are allowing the student to send the transcript, or the university to send the transcript to graduate_applications@ncsu.edu. That is normally in the email that goes out to students asking for official transcripts. Thank you, Asia. And then basically what we need to do is the university should identify who is sending the transcript, their title, the department, and it's mainly for us to cross-check, because we basically go to your university website to see if that person is working at the university. A lot of times we will just check it to make sure that the ID or the email address goes back to the university, so that way we can authenticate the transcript is official. So we do accept it that way.
Sorry, my list just keeps refreshing, so I keep losing things. Someone has asked if they can get health insurance from their home country. I'm assuming that's while they're here.
Yes, it's possible as long as it meets the minimum requirements. So the one thing that that sometimes the health insurance from the home country does not include is medical evacuation and repatriation. That is insurance that will cover a medically assisted flight back home, or in the event that you were to pass away in the United States, it covers the cost of returning your remains home to your family. So, which can be expensive. So, so those are pieces of insurance that are required. And then otherwise, it just needs to meet the other minimum requirements. There is a hard waiver process that is not approved by us. That's approved by the health insurance office on campus. So you have to, if you're going to use your home insurance, and it meets the requirements, they will review that policy. You'll need to get a copy of the English language, an English language copy of that policy for them to review, and then they'll decide whether you get the hard waiver, or not. And then that way you won't be billed for the insurance here.
And then there's a question about travel before arriving. So if the student wanted to arrive in the US, let's say like July, stay with friends or family that they have in the US, and then come to North Carolina and do the OIS check-in process, is that something that they're able to do?
Yeah, so I mean, there's no requirement to report immediately to Raleigh. So if you wanted to go someplace else, you could do that. Just keep in mind of the self-quarantine requirements and the testing requirements. It's also, you know, we're going to be set up and ready to vaccinate you. Vaccinations right now, depending on where you go in the country, are fairly widely available. So you should be able to vaccinate wherever you are, but I would encourage you to go ahead and do that while you're visiting family or friends someplace else before you arrive on campus. And just keep in mind, you can only enter up to 30 days in advance of the start date on your I-20. So just keep that date in mind.
And if individuals already have their I-20, but they need to renew their passport, do they need to get a new I-20 as well?
No, and even if you have the visa stamp in the expiring passport, you can keep that visa stamp. So you just would need to travel with both passports, the expiring passport with the valid visa in it and the new passport. So no, there's no need to get a new document from us because of the passport.
Awesome. This question is probably for Lauren. Are there any WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups for international students or Indian students?
Yes, I believe there are currently 2 Facebook groups. You can search for Fall 2021 NCSU Admits, ADMITS. One of the groups is definitely more active and people are using it to find roommates and identify people who are going to be starting in the same program as them. There are also, I know there's at least one massive WhatsApp group. I don't have the information for that. But if this question is coming from someone from India, you can reach out to Maitri. That's NC State's Graduate Indian Student Association, and I know they have the information for that WhatsApp group. For everyone else, we do have some things coming this summer to help connect you with each other and with current NC State students, and we'll be announcing that through email in the next month. So there'll be lots of ways to connect with each other.
I just love to see the enthusiasm. We're excited to welcome you to campus. It's been a long road.
So someone asked, by what time can we email the department for deferral? I know they said August 1st for the graduate school, and that you should reach out to your department specifically to see if they have an earlier date. Did I get that right from what we had covered earlier? Okay, great. And then how many days after receiving the transcripts will students get their Unity ID?
Once the transcripts are in and they're uploaded, and we will tell you that our offices only open 3 days a week for limited hours. So if you get a notification from your delivery service that it's arrived on a specific date, it may only be uploaded the day later whenever we have staff in the office. Once it's uploaded, it still has to be reviewed by the college liaison and the graduate school, and that could take 2 to 3 business days. Then the final letter is released by the graduate liaison, and to let you know, it takes 24 hours for the Unity ID to generate into a newly released letter. So the first time you open up the letter, you don't see Unity ID listed in the subcategories, then please wait another 24 hours and you will see the Unity ID.
Awesome. And then students want to know, you all had kind of touched on earlier about classes being full and departments have the decisions about whether they'll open up new classes or different seats. Is it recommended that they reach out to the department heads to discuss this?
They should reach out to their DGP, the director of their graduate program. They may be keeping a list to see how many students still need to have a section, and then they could make the decision if they need to open more classes. So definitely reach out to the director of the grad program.
And then what is the deadline to submit the certificate of financial responsibility or to accept their admission?
Right. So May 1st there is a soft deadline. I know some students are still waiting to get their student loans, and that's okay. You know, within the month of May, we'd like to see all the documents into us before June 15th, because you have to look at the turnaround time so that you can book your appointments. So try to get it in as soon as you can.
Okay. It looks like we may also have some students that are in a transfer situation where they're coming from another institution. They have OPT status. I'm not sure if you see those, Beth, if you can touch on that, or Denise.
Yeah, for transfer students within the United States, if they are on OPT, they can stay on OPT because basically their last day, whenever we transfer the CVIS ID from their current school to NC State, that's the last day they can work. And so we normally tell students they can work up until the week before orientation, which is August the 11th, if they still want to do OPT. But otherwise, you can work with your DSO at your current school on figuring out a transfer date.
But the transfer release date is important there. So, you know, if you're going to work throughout the summer, then your transfer release date should be towards like when you want to finish working.
Yes.
And then I'm just going to make a quick note too. For those of you that are chatting in the chat, change it to all panelists and participants. I see some of you have dropped the Facebook group, which I'm going to reshare, but not everyone can see that if it doesn't say all panelists and attendees. So if beside your name, it just says to all panelists, that's just going to us here on the screen. So if you wanted to share it out with a larger group, just make sure you change your setting at the bottom. There's like a little caret that can help you change it. Is there a good place to find information about department employment statistics or any information also about the incoming class size for fall 2021?
I'm not sure if you're talking about employment statistics. I assume it's post-graduation employment statistics.
I believe so, by the way it's.
I'm not actually sure about that. I know the College of Engineering has an employment, like a career services person. I would assume that they keep those numbers. They may be publicly posted. I don't know. Do you all know in admissions?
No, I mean, it would probably be the departments that would have a better idea.
I think you should check with the director of graduate programs for the program that you're attending. They might have those statistics.
And these questions are all about enrollment in MyPack portal. So do we have to enroll in classes through MyPack portal, or is there another place to register? Do we have to register now, or can we wait until we arrive? And those are the two questions, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, enrollment is only done through MyPack portal. And again, you have to have that Unity ID. So that means you have to have completed your CFR and we received your official transcripts. I saw someone else had been asking again what they needed to do to get that Unity ID. Those are the pieces. You can always check your admission application status portal. That will show you what is missing. So there are checklists listed there. If you see checklist items that are outstanding, they have a big red X beside them. That means you haven't completed those and you need to do that before you will get the Unity ID. So then once you have that, registration is in the MyPack portal. And what was the second part of that question, Asia?
Do they have to register for classes now, or can they wait until they arrive?
It's recommended you do it as quickly as possible because you don't want the classes to fill up. So if you can, go ahead and do that before you arrive.
And the next question we have is the CEVIS fee valid for only 1 year? A student had deferred last year, had already paid the CEVIS fee. Do they need to pay it again for this upcoming semester?
As long as you have the same CEVIS ID, you should not have to pay it again.
No, and if you've deferred, it's the same CEVIS ID that would appear. And the only thing that'll be changed is the date of entry.
Yeah, and even if you do have, if you've never, like, let's say you got a CEVIS fee or you paid a CEVIS fee for a different school's I-20 and you decide you want to use our I-20 and come here, I believe that you can, there's a way through the website where you can transfer that CEVIS fee to the new document. So as long as you haven't used you haven't used your F1 status, you haven't entered in the United States, then that fee should still be valid.
And do you all know at this,
Just,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
just one more question, Asia.
Just one more? Okay.
Yeah.
The last question that we have is, do we know how long visa processing times are right now?
So the visa processing time, there's two factors. There's the time to get an appointment, and then there's the time after the appointment to issue the visa. And so this question was coming from someone who where there's no U.S. embassy in their country. So I'm going to take an educated guess and guess that this is someone from Iran. And so the factors to consider are security checks and implications of security checks. And Iran is not the only country where the security checks are common. They are also common for certain fields. So, we have a nuclear engineering program on our campus and a nuclear reactor across the street from our office. And so those can spark some security concerns, if you're going to study nuclear engineering. So it's not uncommon for, aerospace engineering, some of those fields that have military applications or what we call dual use technologies, where they could have, the capacity to help and the capacity to harm. It's not uncommon for security checks to be required for those types of visas, especially for PhD candidates. So those checks are called Mantis checks. Those generally can be resolved within about 3 weeks. I honestly don't know what the current processing time for those is because, to be quite frank, we haven't had enough visa applicants to have any information about that. So, during the early part of the pandemic, I think that might have been a little bit slower just because it requires a bunch of different offices within the U.S. government to sign off on them before they can be approved. Now I think that is less of an impact, but I honestly don't know. But I would guess that if you are subject to a security check, 3 weeks is a pretty standard amount of time, but they can take longer.
All right, thank you, everyone. I know there's still 96 questions in the Q&A, but in the interest of time, we do need to wrap things up this morning. Rest assured that we're going to be doing this again. I think as we learn more this summer about immigration, what to expect coming to campus for fall 2021, we'll host another one of these specifically on admissions and immigration again soon. But I do want to point out again, for those of you that have attended these before, you've heard this already, but some resources for you as a new NC State student. First is our virtual English conversation club. It does meet weekly through Zoom. And I specifically want to point out the Wednesday morning session, as that may work best for many of you, depending on your current location. It's a great way to begin to adjust to American English, but also a great way to meet people here in Raleigh before you even arrive. We also have our packing up pre-arrival session. We'll host another one in May, and you'll receive an email from the graduate school soon announcing those details. And I do want to point out that we do have our previous sessions posted on our website, and you can use that link reflected on that slide, go.ncsu.edu/packing-up, to access those recordings. Again, 96 questions still sitting in the Q&A. And so I do want to mention our contact information for both the Office of International Services and the Graduate School. We love interacting with you live, but this is not the only way to get answers to your questions. So please reach out to our respective offices and we'll be happy to help you in any way that we can.
Yeah, just to be clear though, admissions questions for the admissions I-20s, those are best handled by the graduate school, okay? OIS, we are your home once you arrive, and most of your questions will come to us. But if you're trying to figure out how to get that document in order to come, those questions need to go to the graduate school.
Yeah, and I'd also like to point out that I'm leaving this position next week. So Haley Hardenbrook, who will, there is a response on my emails, and her email address will be listed so that you can contact her with additional questions.
Yeah, so again, just to cover that, any admissions questions, those would go to the graduate school. Questions about immigration, orientation, or life after you arrive, those would come to the Office of International Services. And so with that, I want to thank our campus experts for taking the time this morning to answer so many questions, and to thank you, our new students, for the great questions that you asked. I do also want to take a minute to thank Denise for the years that she has spent serving international students. As you've heard a couple times, she is leaving NC State in the coming weeks, but she is famous with new students because of all of the documents that she signed, the emails that she's sent to you. And so I know that everyone on this call joins me in thanking Denise for the way that she served international students. As a final reminder, everyone registered for today's session, you will be receiving an email once the recording is available. And that email will come either end of this week or early next week. And then again, you'll be able to find any of the recordings on that website I mentioned just a couple minutes ago. But with that, we look forward to seeing you at our May Packing Up Pre-Arrival session, and we hope you have a great rest of the day wherever you are.